It was supposed to be the best wedding anniversary of my life. 10 years with Magnus, the perfect man, charming CEO, successful, my rock. I planned everything: elegant table, flickering candles, a custom gold bracelet I designed myself for him. But Magnus arrived late, 2 hours late. He reeked of expensive women's perfume, and his phone kept buzzing nonstop in his pocket. At our intimate party with 15 guests, she showed up out of nowhere. Ria Voss, platinum blonde, 2 million Instagram followers. Just a work colleague, he swore. But the looks they exchanged, everyone noticed. The way she touched his arm, laughed too loudly at his jokes. My stomach turned. At midnight, after the guests left, he exploded at me. "You don't understand me anymore, Adira. I deserve more than this," he yelled. Glasses flew off the table, and then came the brutal confession. The affair with Ria, going on for months. He grabbed his suitcase, slammed the door, and left me there, alone in the silence of our empty house. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing, until I spotted his phone forgotten on the dining table. Hands shaking, I unlocked the screen. What I found inside wasn't just betrayal. It was something much worse. A secret that would destroy everything he'd built. And by 7 a.m., Magnus woke up with no job, no lover, no family, no reputation. Everyone knew. Stay with me till the end to find out what that phone revealed. That night plays again in my mind sometimes. The rain against the windows like static, the taste of wine gone sour in my mouth, the way my chest felt too small to hold all that pain. People talk about grief like it comes after death, but grief also lives in rooms where love dies slowly. The house felt hollow after everyone left. The faint echo of laughter from a few hours earlier became a ghost in the air. I could still see the candle stub melting beside the untouched dessert. The faint scent of perfume clinging to Magnus's chair. Foreign, artificial, not mine. I sat there, breathing slow, feeling the silk of my silver dress against my skin. A prison of beauty wrapping around heartbreak. Every detail I'd planned suddenly looked foolish. The roses, the music, the monogrammed napkins, like confetti scattered over loss. I glanced at the window. Outside, a thin trail of water reflected the moonlight, like tears sliding down glass. I whispered to myself, he said he loved me today. Strange how lies sound lighter when spoken over champagne. For 10 years, Magnus had been everything people admired. Self-made CEO, brilliant strategist, the charming man who could command a room. My friends envied me. They said I was lucky. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. Because I believed it too. I thought we were partners. I thought every deal he made, every risk he took, had my name etched beneath his. I didn't realize until later that he was building everything over me, not with me. And tonight, the cracks finally showed. The phone sat on the table like a loaded gun. Silent, glass surface glimmering with half-buried secrets. My hands trembled before touching it. Magnus had never let me near his phone. Privacy, he'd call it. In truth, it was his fortress. And now the gate stood open. When I unlocked it, the screen burst alive with messages. Hundreds, littered across months. Her name everywhere. Ria, the same woman who smiled like she owned the room tonight, whispering something into his ear while guests pretended not to notice. Seeing her messages changed something primal in me. They weren't just flirtations, they were strategy. Phrases like, "It's almost ready," "We'll fly before anyone suspects," "She still thinks she's in control." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my skull. I realized then that the betrayal went far deeper than a lie of passion. It was a betrayal of survival. Something financial, something deliberate. The phone chimed again. One unread notification from his email. Transfer approved, $2,700,000. My chest locked. Why would he move that kind of money at midnight? And why did the account name sound too familiar? I froze. The sender line read, Adira and Magnus Holdings. My name was on it. As a guarantor, a co-signer, a signature I never gave. My hands went cold. The man I loved hadn't just cheated on me. He'd used me. Every ounce of trust, every business detail, every investor meeting I'd built with sweat and hope, twisted into his own escape route. In those minutes, grief transformed into something else. Clarity. Magnus had said I didn't understand him anymore. He was right, because the man standing at my door hours ago wasn't the one I married. That version died quietly somewhere between ambition and deceit. I remember the clock glowing 2:14 a.m. as I sat there, scrolling through evidence like someone walking barefoot over broken glass. Each screenshot sliced deeper. There were spreadsheets with hidden transfers, shell accounts, all under both our names. He'd used my jewelry tech company as collateral for loans that never existed. For months, he'd been funneling money through Ria's influencer brand sponsorships. Disguised invoices, false campaigns, all leading to one goal: to bankrupt me quietly while escaping wealthy enough to start over. Lightning struck outside, silver arteries splitting the sky. Somewhere inside me, a new heartbeat formed. Steady, calm, deliberate. Revenge didn't roar, it whispered. I looked at my reflection in the window. Smudged mascara, swollen eyes, hair loose and messy. But my gaze was sharp, focused. That's the strange thing about loss. It burns away weakness until only purpose remains. I whispered into the empty room, "You taught me precision, Magnus." My lips curved into the faintest smile. Now watch how I use it. I turned off the phone, collected every piece of evidence I could, transferred files to an encrypted folder. I'd contact Riley soon, my hacker friend, loyal as blood, brilliant enough to make corporate walls crumble. Outside, dawn was still hours away, but I could already taste the morning air. Cold, clean, and waiting for justice. Where are you watching from? Ever felt this betrayal? That night, I finally understood something. Love isn't blind. It just closes its eyes until the truth screams loud enough, and in a few hours, the world would hear that scream. When I think back to that night, it wasn't the champagne bubbles or the golden plates I remember most. It was the sound of her laughter, sharp and crystalline, slicing through the room like broken glass. Ria Voss. She was the kind of woman people turned toward before they even realized it. Every movement rehearsed, every smile calculated. She didn't walk into a room. She arrived. And when she arrived at my anniversary party, uninvited, the air itself seemed to catch its breath. The door opened and a breeze followed her, perfume that smelled like magazines and money. The crowd hushed, only for a second, just enough for me to feel the chill. Magnus moved toward her instantly. He didn't even hesitate. "Ria," he said, voice warm, practiced. He placed a hand on the small of her back, that subtle, possessive gesture married men are never supposed to use. My pulse thudded so loud it blurred the jazz playing in the background. The guests smiled politely, unaware, or maybe pretending to be. Society loves to ignore discomfort as long as the champagne flows. I set down my glass. When she turned toward me, I saw recognition flash behind her bright smile. "Adira, I just happened to be in the neighborhood," she said, as if this were a casual Tuesday, not the night marking a decade of my vows. "Magnus mentioned this lovely soirée. I hope I'm not intruding." Intruding. As if her presence hadn't already redrawn the entire shape of the room. Magnus chuckled nervously. "Of course not. You're always welcome. Always welcome." Those words hit harder than the bubbles rising in my empty stomach. Ria's dress was white, not cream, not ivory, pure white satin, liquid against her body. No woman wears white to another woman's celebration unless she wants to set fire to the tablecloth, and she was enjoying every second of it. As she floated through the room, my friends exchanged wary glances. Riley mouthed a silent, "Who is she?" from across the bar. I gave a tiny shake of my head, forcing a smile that felt stapled to my face. Ria found her way to the spotlight without trying. Within minutes, she had my guests laughing, scrolling through her Instagram feed, and asking follow-up questions about her collaboration with Magnus's marketing team. I'd never heard of that collaboration. "She's helping me expand brand visibility," Magnus said loud enough for everyone to hear, like a proud manager introducing his new protege. "Great cross-promotion opportunities ahead." The words burned. He'd never once described me that way at business meetings. Ria's fingers brushed his arm as she laughed too hard at something he said. My mother caught the gesture and stiffened, setting her glass down a bit too firmly. Even the waiter paused mid-step. Everyone noticed. Everyone except Magnus. No, he noticed. He just didn't care. I excused myself and walked toward the balcony, the air heavy with the scent of lilies and deceit. From there, I watched them through the glass. Her manicured hand resting near his cufflink, how he leaned slightly closer than decorum allowed. My skin prickled with cold fury. The city lights blurred below, gold and blue, stretching endlessly. And for a moment, I wondered how many other women had stood at windows like this, hearts thundering in silence, realizing they were watching their own life shatter quietly behind them. I turned back inside. Magnus saw me and smiled across the room, that corporate smile that never reached his eyes. It was the same one he used at investor lunches, curated, empty, dangerous. I held his gaze for a moment, then gently clinked my wine glass against the table edge. The sound sliced through their flirtation. Some guests shifted awkwardly. The laughter died down. For half a second, she lost her rhythm, then recovered, asking Magnus about next week's trip. He stiffened. I memorized it, the brief hitch in his expression, and tucked it somewhere deep inside, where my anger slept light. I returned to the table, slipping into hostess mode. 10 years of practice made it effortless. My jokes flowed, my smile returned on command, but inside, I was cataloging every whisper, every glance, every tremor in his composure. When dinner began, Rhea took the seat directly across from Magnus, placing her phone beside her plate. Notifications sparkled like tiny fireworks. I noticed one photo on her lock screen, a blurred snapshot of a hand in a suit holding a champagne flute. The cufflink looked painfully familiar. Halfway through the meal, guests began to relax again. I wished I could, but Rhea's eyes met mine across the candles, steady, challenging. It wasn't seduction, it was territory. I leaned back, smiling faintly, refusing to blink first. If she thought she could humiliate me in my own home, she hadn't studied her opponent well enough. By dessert, the room buzzed again. Magnus gave a short speech. Nothing romantic, just a generic toast about grateful years and bright futures. Everyone applauded. I felt nothing. Then Rhea stood, touching her glass gently with a spoon. "A toast to partnerships," she said, glancing meaningfully at Magnus. "To creativity and unexpected synergy." Some guests laughed uneasily. My brother's wife coughed into her napkin. Magnus looked down. Something dark flickered through me. Not just anger, but revelation. I'd seen this before. Ambition disguising itself as affection. Rhea wasn't just the other woman. She was the plan. I raised my glass too, the fragile crystal catching light. "Yes," I said softly. "To exposure." Our eyes locked. Her smile faltered for the first time. For the remainder of the night, she lingered close to Magnus, whispering things I couldn't hear. People started leaving around 11, their polite smiles taut with tension. They could pretend all they wanted, but whispers would spread fast. When the room finally emptied, the silence felt thicker than smoke. Only the faint hum of city traffic seeped through the windows. Magnus walked toward me, jaw tight, hands buried in his pockets. "You didn't have to make tonight weird," he muttered. "Weird?" I repeated, keeping my voice even. "You invited her." He avoided my eyes. "She's good for business." I stepped closer. "And what business are we talking about, Magnus? Jewelry? Tech? Or something more personal?" His nostrils flared. I saw the first crack in his mask, and it almost made me pity him. Almost. Before I could say more, Rhea appeared again at the doorway, her white dress catching moonlight. "Magnus," she called softly, "the car is here." The words sliced through whatever fragile bridge we had left. He glanced between us, guilt flickering, arrogance returning, and said, "I'll be right there." Then to me, a whisper, "Don't start. Don't start." I smiled, small and sharp. "Oh, darling," I said. "I already have." He frowned, confused, then turned away. Her silhouette disappeared beside his. The door clicked shut, final as a gunshot, and for the first time that night, I let the mask slip. I stared at the glow of their departing headlights through the window. My reflection stared back, tired, hollow, but dangerous, because something in me had just woken up, something colder than grief, sharper than rage. He thought I was broken. He had no idea I'd just begun gathering the pieces. The clock struck midnight. The last guests were gone, leaving behind only half-empty glasses and the faint smell of wilted roses. The silence pressed against the walls like fog. I could still hear Rhea's laughter echoing in my head, even though she'd left an hour ago. Or at least I thought she had. Magnus stood near the piano, loosening his tie. His shirt cuffs were unbuttoned, the picture of exhaustion and arrogance mixed into one. I watched him motionless while the candle flames burned low, bending under the heavy air. 10 years, I said quietly. "And that's how you look at me tonight?" He turned, brows furrowed. "Adira, please don't start. Don't start." The same tone he used whenever he wanted control. The CEO voice. Confident, Calculated. I folded my arms. You've been starting this for months, Magnus. I've just been catching up. His jaw tightened. Can we not do this right now? Now is all we have, I said. She showed up here, dressed in white, touching you like you were hers. You really thought no one noticed? He sighed, pouring himself whiskey. You're seeing ghosts. Ria's just business. Business doesn't stare at you like that. He slammed the glass down. You don't understand my world anymore. The words tore through the room, sharp as shrapnel. You sit in your studio polishing stones, designing pretty bracelets while I'm out there fighting for expansion, negotiations, investors. You should thank me. Something inside me detonated. Thank you? I whispered. For humiliating me tonight? He paced, voice rising. You suffocate me, Adira. Every decision, every move. You question, you doubt, you cling. I deserve more than this. The sound shattered something invisible between us. My breath caught. More than this? His hand flew out, knocking over a crystal glass. It exploded against the floor, shards scattering like stars. Yes! He shouted. I deserve someone who believes in me, someone who looks at me and sees potential, not control. The irony tasted bitter. Control. The one thing he'd forged over every inch of my life. For a second, I thought he'd calm down. His shoulders trembled. His expression softened slightly. But then his eyes shifted. Not remorseful, but reckless. I didn't plan for you to find out like this, he said, voice dropping lower. But maybe it's better you know. I'm done pretending. I felt the floor tilt. Know what? He looked straight at me. It's Ria. I froze. She makes me feel alive, he continued. She understands ambition. She isn't drowning in sentiment like you. It started months ago, during that influencer campaign. You were too busy polishing your designs to notice. My heart stopped listening after the word months. Time fractured. Every warm moment replayed itself backwards. Kisses, laughter, promises, turning to smoke. You're saying this now? I asked, voice trembling. Tonight? After 10 years? He shrugged. You wouldn't have believed me before. A harsh laugh escaped my lips. Oh, I believe you now. I believe every piece of cruelty. Magnus looked around, restless, grabbing his suitcase from behind the couch. I'm leaving tonight, he announced. I need space. Maybe we both do. I watched him zip the case. The metallic sound pierced me deeper than any scream could. Where? I asked. He didn't answer. You're going to her, I said flatly. His silence confirmed everything. I stepped closer, the candlelight catching the edge of his face, illuminating the stranger he'd become. You're not running from me, I said. You're running from guilt. He straightened his shoulders. Don't dramatize it, Adira. We're adults. These things happen. I almost laughed. Cheating isn't weather, Magnus. It doesn't just happen. You chose it. He rolled his eyes, grabbed his coat, and walked toward the door. You'll get over it. You always do. The words hit harder than his betrayal. You'll get over it. Like my pain was just another meeting he could reschedule. I stepped forward, blocking his way. Does she know the kind of man she's getting? He smirked. She knows enough. That smile, smooth, practiced, cruel, broke whatever remained of my restraint. I slapped him. Once. The sound cracked across the silence. Magnus froze, then laughed softly, rubbing his cheek. See? This is what I mean. You're unstable. Don't use therapy language to sanitize betrayal, I said coldly. You're not self-actualizing. You're disintegrating. His expression twisted. You think your poetic monologues change reality? It's over, Adira. He reached for the handle. I stared at him one last time. 10 years, I whispered, and all you learned was deceit. He didn't reply. The door slammed a second later, so loud the chandelier quivered above me. The silence that followed was absolute, the kind that hums, the kind that makes the world tilt slightly sideways. For a moment I stood there, staring at the empty hallway, at the ghost of his voice echoing in the air. Then my knees gave out. The cold marble floor met me halfway. The sobs came hard, violent, uncontained. All the years boiled down to a single ruin of sound. I don't know how long I cried, maybe minutes, maybe hours. The candles died one by one. My mascara smeared, mixing grief with exhaustion. Everything around me blurred, and then through blurred eyes, I saw it. The faint glow on the dining table. Magnus's phone. He'd left it. At first I thought of calling him, begging for explanation, closure, anything to fill the void. But the longer I stared at that glowing rectangle, the more I realized closure wasn't what I wanted. Answers were. I crawled toward it, hands shaking, my breath ragged. When I picked it up, the warmth of his touch still lingered on the glass, making my skin crawl. I sat against the wall, phone in my lap, screen flickering softly. My reflection stared back, pale and hollow. My thumb hovered above it. I could still hear his voice. "You're unstable." A laugh, a door slam, a suitcase. I swallowed the silence whole and pressed the power button. The screen came alive. Notifications blinked like tiny pulses in the dark. One name appeared first. The same one that had haunted me all night. Ria Voss. Dozens of messages, photos, audio notes. My heart stumbled. I hesitated. I wanted to drop it, to pretend none of this existed. But there's a thin line between fear and hunger, and I crossed it. I opened the first message. The words that appeared next made my skin turn to ice. I didn't understand them yet, but I knew, just from the tone, that what waited inside this phone wasn't just infidelity. It was architecture, a system, deliberate destruction disguised as love. The house creaked softly as if bearing witness. The wind outside rattled the window pane. I whispered into the silent darkness, "Let's see what secret you died protecting." And as I unlocked the next folder, I felt my heartbeat change rhythm. Not grief anymore, but strategy. Cliffhanger is sometimes mistaken for fear, but what I felt wasn't fear. It was awakening, because some endings arrive disguised as beginnings. The house was silent except for the faint hum of rain outside. I sat on the cold marble floor, Magnus's phone glowing in my hands like a forbidden relic. It felt heavy, as though it carried the weight of everything he'd tried to hide behind those impeccable suits and effortless charm. The lock screen shimmered, his usual photo, a mountain sunrise from our trip to Aspen years ago. Back then, he'd said the light reminded him of renewal. Tonight, it felt like irony. I wiped my tears and stared at the password field. 4 digits. I tried his usual combinations. Our wedding date, his mother's birthday, the number of our house. Nothing. My chest tightened. He'd changed it. And then, out of instinct, I typed 0210, Ria's birth month. The screen unlocked. I froze. The adrenaline shook through me like electricity, sharp and unbearable. It wasn't chance. He'd built his digital walls around her. The home screen glowed with icons arranged perfectly, neat folders labeled finance, work, PR, photos. But it was the last one. A hidden folder named private with a lock icon that pulled me in. I hesitated. My mind whispered, "Don't do this." But my gut whispered louder, "You already lost everything. What's left to lose?" I tapped. Inside, messages appeared, not just between him and Ria, but threads involving unfamiliar names, project managers, account handlers, even investors. My breath came shallow. The first message from Ria read, "Magnus, the campaign transfer cleared. She'll never notice. You're a genius." My stomach turned. I scrolled. "We'll have enough once the second phase hits. The jewelry app was the perfect front. She thinks it's hers, but we used her license to unlock the returns." License. My license. I blinked fast, reread the words. My jewelry tech venture wasn't just my professional pride, it was my soul's work. Years of sketches, patents, prototypes merging craftsmanship and digital sensors. He had branded it under my name, yes, but he'd insisted on managing investor relations himself. "You're the creative force," he'd said. "Let me handle the boring finance." The perfect trap. Lightning flickered outside, white veins crawling across the sky. I felt my heartbeat sync with it. Erratic, furious. Screenshots of invoices followed. Luxury marketing expenses, phantom production orders, all tied to Ria's influencer business. Every amount circled back to our company's account. I scrolled until I reached an email chain titled Exit Strategy. The first line, "Magnus confirmed, Bahamas account active, Ria's passport renewal cleared, flight set for Thursday. Once funding hits, cut contact with Adira immediately." My entire body went still. They were planning to run. The file attached was a scanned document, my forged signature authorizing transfers totaling $2,700,000 in capital reassignment. I zoomed in, breath tightening. My signature looked perfect, but the scan metadata showed it was lifted from an older design contract. I would have never signed this. My hands went cold. The man I loved hadn't just cheated on me. He'd used me. Every ounce of trust, every business detail, every investor meeting I'd built with sweat and hope, twisted into his own escape route. I could hear Magnus's voice echoing faintly in my head. You suffocate me. No, Magnus. I supported you. You suffocated me, with arrogance and control. The room spun slowly. My wine glass lay shattered in a crimson puddle nearby. I was surrounded by ruins, emotional and physical. The phone buzzed suddenly. It was incoming messages. I checked. Ria again. Is she asleep yet? Don't forget to wipe messages. We're one step from freedom, love. Love. I exhaled with a bitter, hollow laugh. There was a typo at the end. She'd accidentally sent a voice note instead of text. I played it. Her voice was syrupy, confident. She's too naive. Even if she finds out, no one will believe her. Magnus, you'll handle it. You always do. The record ended, static humming behind it. I lowered the phone slowly. You're wrong, I whispered. Someone will believe me, because I'll show them everything. For the first time all night, my tears ended. A stillness replaced them, an almost frightening calm. I opened the documents folder next. Dozens of PDFs labeled by dates and project names. I clicked one titled Investor Ledger and saw the same patterns. Money rerouted, accounts renamed, shell companies across 3 states. Magnus had built a maze. But what he didn't expect was that I'd know how to trace every stone. Years ago, I'd hired Riley for cybersecurity on my prototype patents. She could breach firewalls like magic. I needed her again, not just as a friend, but as justice. I composed a message. Riley, emergency, need your help. Magnus stole funds, details coming. Then paused. No, tonight was for information. Tomorrow would be for execution. My phone battery blinked low. I plugged it in, screen glowing like a command center. Outside, thunder rolled through the city, deep and resonant, like applause for vengeance. I returned to Ria's profile. Public photos filled with filters and glamour. Her last post captioned, "Success feels better when it's stolen." I checked comments, thousands of fans worshiping her. She had no idea the storm approaching her feed by dawn. My fingers drifted over Magnus's contact list. He'd named me Adira, home, Ria, Voss. The contrast stung like branding marks. I opened the deleted folder. Beneath random drafts were voice memos. The oldest one started with my name. Adira can never know. The board thinks she's the majority shareholder. We use that to keep investors quiet. When this deal closes, her liability will destroy her reputation. We'll be gone before she can react. I stopped breathing. Magnus hadn't just betrayed me. He'd planned to make me his fall guy. My signature, my reputation, my credit, my ruin. Something inside clicked. Sharp, deliberate, unstoppable. The woman who collapsed hours ago wasn't gone. She was morphing. I stood, the cold air wrapping around my bare shoulders. The candles had burned to ash, but I felt my own light reigniting, quiet, strategic, lethal. I thought of the phrase engraved inside the bracelet I'd given him tonight. Love is built on trust. The irony made me smile. The phone buzzed again. Fresh message from Ria. Magnus, are you there? Did she suspect anything? I clicked. Reply. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, steady as diamond cutters. Then slowly I typed, yes, she knows. I hit send. Seconds later, a typing bubble appeared. Who is this? Came her reply. I smiled faintly, heart hammering. The glow of the screen reflected in my tear-streaked face. The next words I typed weren't for her benefit. They were for mine. By morning, you'll wish you never met him. I locked the screen, placed it back on the table, and whispered to the dark house. Now we start. The rain eased outside, but thunder still echoed like distant drums, heralding the storm about to hit. Magnus thought he escaped tonight. He just didn't realize the real chase had already begun. I don't remember standing up. One moment, I was staring at the darkened screen. The next, I was walking toward the dining table as if drawn by something magnetic and poisonous. The phone waited there, silent but alive with buried noise. I tapped the screen, and the room brightened slightly, a soft glow cutting through the wreckage of candles and broken glass. I opened the message app again. My hands didn't shake anymore. The fear had drained out of me, replaced by precision. The same focus I used when bending molten gold into shape. Every reflection of flame on metal, every flaw corrected. That was how I would handle Magnus now. With craft, not chaos. Hundreds of messages filled the screen, stretching back months. I started at the bottom. Rhea, you're tense again, love. Tell her you're traveling for work. I'll book the suite at the Meridian. Magnus, she's suspicious. Rhea, then make her believe you still adore her. You're good at that. One look from you and anyone melts. My throat burned. I scrolled faster. Photos appeared, hotel rooms, table settings, champagne bottles. A selfie of them together, his arm around her waist. She wore my brand's earrings, gifts meant for clients, taken from my studio. Beneath the photo he'd written, worth every risk. I kept scrolling. Messages shifted from passion to planning. She's launching new designs next month, he'd written. Perfect time to pull the funds quietly. Everyone's focus will be on her show. I felt my pulse thud behind my temples. My own husband had timed my success to serve his theft. A video clip loaded unexpectedly. I pressed play. The sound was low at first. Laughter, then his voice. You make it hard to go home, Magnus said. Then the camera turned. Rhea, skin glowing under dim light, murmured, That's the idea. I watched for exactly 3 seconds before deleting it. The image seared itself anyway, unerasable. I'd thought pain would break me. Instead, it sharpened me. By the time I reopened the gallery folder, I wasn't trembling. I was documenting. Every picture, every timestamp. Proof. They'd traveled together, Miami, Chicago, even Prague, during trips I'd been told were investor outreach meetings. The gallery metadata confirmed flight dates matching company expenses. He'd lied not just to me, but to every shareholder. And to think he called me naive. I copied the files to a cloud drive linked to a blank address. One Riley Stone had taught me to keep for emergencies. I knew what these images meant. In the legal world, perception is currency, and these would buy me all the influence I needed when the moment came. Outside, thunder rolled again. I turned off the phone and let my eyes adjust to the faint light leaking through the curtains. The rain had slowed to a whisper, but my thoughts were racing too fast for rest. Then another vibration. His email app, still logged in. Subject line, Investor Dinner Follow-Up. Inside, he thanked partners for trusting our vision and mentioned a coming liquidity event scheduled for mid-April. Attached, spreadsheets. I saved them. But below that email, an exchange caught my attention. Rhea. She'll blame herself first. They always do. Magnus. Guilt will keep her quiet until we're gone. Rhea. Good. Because once the money's clear, you're mine entirely. I whispered the words aloud, tasting their venom. They always do. No, not this time. I walked toward the window. The skyline of the city pulsed with distant lights, a constellation built from ambition and deceit. Somewhere out there, Rhea was probably asleep in a perfectly staged apartment, believing she'd won. Magnus, too, dreaming of freedom built on my ruin. They had no idea their empire had already begun to collapse from within. My reflection in the glass startled me. My hair stuck to damp cheeks, mascara streaked like war paint. But my eyes, they looked severer, hollow of pity, rich with purpose. Behind me, the phone lit up again. A new voice memo. Rhea's, time-stamped 5 hours before the party. Don't forget tonight's performance, she'd said, giggling. Make her feel invisible, but keep it classy. By morning, she'll still be thanking you for crumbs while we sign freedom papers. Performance. So that's what my anniversary dinner had been. A dress rehearsal for my humiliation. I replayed that last line again, quieter. By morning, they'd planned to finalize everything tonight. I opened Magnus's calendar. His next event marked investor wire transfer, 5 a.m. My chest tightened. That was only a few hours away. He hadn't finished the theft yet. His final move depended on approval codes connected to his device. The device now sitting in my hand. My grief turned into an almost electric clarity. The storm outside broke again, rain thundering against the glass. Every droplet sounded like a countdown. I moved quickly now, gathering documents, forwarding attachments to my secured server. Screenshots, signatures, statements. Nothing emotional left, only evidence. Precision, focus, intent. My wedding photo still stood on the mantel. The frame tilted slightly from when he slammed the door earlier. I stared at it for a long moment. We looked so convincing there. 2 professionals glowing under fairy lights. I picked it up, then set it face down on the table beside his phone. This house had witnessed too many illusions. A deep calm settled in, the same kind that comes before an artist's final strike of the chisel. I pressed record on his phone and spoke softly into the microphone. Magnus, You always said truth is subjective. Let's see if the board agrees. I saved the audio, time-stamped 2:53 a.m., then encrypted everything. When I looked up again, dawn was hinting at the edge of the window, a faint silver line cutting the night. I hadn't realized how much time had passed. The phone buzzed one last time. Message from Ria. Are we set for 5, Hal? Need confirmation. My fingers hovered. I typed slowly. Confirmed. Everything's in motion. I sent it, then powered the phone down and placed it gently beside his half-empty whiskey glass. My pulse steadied. The calm wasn't peace, it was preparation. The city outside shimmered, rain slick and waiting. I could almost hear the future unfolding, the slow, inevitable crumble of their perfect lie. And just before I turned away, I caught my reflection again, a faint smile ghosting across my lips. I whispered to it, to her, to the new version of me taking shape. Let's see how dawn treats them. The first light of morning hadn't yet broken, but the darkness had begun to thin, that fragile hour when shapes regain their outlines and truths crawl out of the shadows. I had spent the last 2 hours dissecting every folder on Magnus's phone. Each click peeled back another layer of our marriage, like skin stripped from a lie. I opened the financial directory again. Hidden beneath bland titles and numerical chaos, there it was, a subfolder labeled Archive A. Inside, dozens of spreadsheets shimmered in sterile rows of digital ink. I scrolled slowly, each cell whispering corruption. The entries looked ordinary at first: shipments, marketing expenses, software updates. But my background in design had taught me to hunt for patterns. And there it was, a series of identical payment codes repeated across different vendor names, each adding up to impossible totals. Every figure led back to a holding account registered under Adir 11 Designs LLC. My name. He'd used my company to funnel investor capital into his private accounts. The realization landed heavy and cold in my stomach. Those weren't random numbers. They were veins pumping stolen money through a marble-veined heart. Mine. I highlighted the total. $2,700,000. The number glared at me, obscene. I opened the linked invoices. Each one bore my digital signature, perfect replication, down to the pressure pattern of the stylus. He'd traced trust itself. Outside, the sky began to color faintly, gray edging toward bruised lavender. The world was waking, mine was collapsing. I closed my eyes and remembered the day he'd insisted on becoming majority manager. You need creative freedom, he had said, smiling. Let me handle operations. I'd signed the papers that day while a photographer captured us for a business magazine. The headline later read, "The Power Couple, Reinventing Art and Tech." I almost laughed now. Power couple? They had been half right. I reopened the email threads. Magnus had written to the board. Adira has approved the transfer. Documents to follow. Attached, the forged authorization letter. Beneath it, another email from Ria. Once wired, we vanish. Post-launch, your liability clause hits in 2 months. She'll face the debt alone. Liability clause. That was why the contracts Magnus handled personally had always felt a little too exclusive. Hidden fine print linking all remaining debts to my collateral. I leaned back in my chair, body rigid, pulse steady. Rage no longer screamed. It whispered, precise and arithmetic. I printed nothing. Screenshots would suffice. Screens don't tremble. Then I found a file named Endgame. It contained a single PDF, 1 page. Jonas and Hale Legal Consultancy, letterhead at the top. To confirm, after March 31st, all proprietary rights of the Levin Magnus Jewelry Tech collection will transfer solely to Magnus Levin. Partner Adira Levin will retain creative equity with no financial claim. No financial claim. He'd scheduled my erasure. I laughed, a sound too hollow to be human, then clamped it down into silence. I pressed record on my own phone and read the document aloud, time-stamping every word. Proof. My voice sounded detached, like narration from somebody else's tragedy. Halfway through, another alert chimed, a scheduled transfer notification due in 30 minutes. The interface showed the sequence, multiple withdrawals routed offshore via the Bahamas Trust 02 account. It was already authorized, waiting for biometric confirmation. His thumbprint, the same thumbprint still registered on his phone. For a long moment, I stared at the screen, realizing I held the final move of his game in my hand. He thought he'd left victorious. He hadn't realized I'd inherited the board. I placed my thumb over the scanner and hesitated. I could cancel, reroute, stall. But something colder struck me. Why stop the theft privately when public ruin would be cleaner? I needed an audience. The plan began crystallizing in staccato flashes. Extract proof, copy backups, expose everything simultaneously. The board, the investors, the press, even her million-plus followers. Rhea had built her life on image worship. I would turn image into her punishment. I transferred supplementary files to my secure drive. Each upload bar climbed steadily, rhythmic as a heartbeat. The city outside shifted colors, streetlights fading, dawn catching on wet pavement. Somewhere across town, Magnus was probably pouring coffee beside Rhea, clueless that his empire's countdown had begun. When the final document finished uploading, I shut down the phone and sat still. The quiet hummed. Even the rain had stopped, leaving the air dense and expectant. I thought back to every moment he'd dismissed me, every board meeting where he interrupted, every time he waved off my intuition as emotion. Emotion had built this business. Emotion sold art. Empathy was leverage. And now, it would be my weapon. I opened my jewelry catalog design file on my own laptop, scrolling past lines of code that connected sensors to each gold structure. Hidden behind one of those design dashboards was a corporate database link under Magnus's credentials, another relic from the early code phase when we shared everything. I logged in, still active. One click and I had access to investor mailing lists, hundreds of addresses. I hovered over Select All. Not yet. First, I needed Riley Stone. She was the key to maximum precision. My phone buzzed with her response to the message I'd drafted hours earlier. I'm awake. Send details. I wrote back, I have his phone. He forged financials under my name. Amount, 2.7 million. I want it exposed everywhere. Her reply came instantly. Then you'll need to crash it all at once. Give me 3 hours. 3 hours. That was all I needed to turn grief into warfare. I powered off the devices and moved toward the balcony doors. The first shaft of sunlight pierced through the rain clouds, glinting gold across the city skyline. It bathed the scattered jewelry prototypes on my table, tiny sculptures of ambition, in pale light. They shimmered like witnesses. I whispered to them, he built this empire on my trust. I'll rebuild it on his ashes. Behind me, the phone rebooted on its own. Automatic update. A new notification banner appeared. Upcoming meeting, Levin investors call, 7 white a.m. Perfect. I would not attend with tears this time. I would attend with proof. I reached for the phone one last time, locking eyes with my own reflection in the black screen. The woman staring back was no longer waiting to be loved. She was preparing a reckoning. The sky outside flushed fully gold. Somewhere out there, Magnus was still asleep beside his conspirator, unaware that Dawn had chosen sides. And I, for the first time in years, was finally awake. 3 hours. That was all Riley Stone needed. That was all I needed. I sat at the kitchen table with 2 phones, 1 laptop, and a cup of coffee I never drank. The steam curled upward and dissolved, like promises, like vows, like the version of myself that had once believed in Magnus completely. I watched it disappear and felt nothing but focus. Riley Stone arrived at 4:15 a.m. No knock, just the sound of the spare key in the lock. She moved through the darkened hallway with the quiet certainty of someone who had seen worse and fixed it. Dark hoodie, hair pulled back, laptop bag over one shoulder. She took one look at my face and set everything down without a word. Show me, she said. I showed her everything. The spreadsheets, the forged signatures, the shell companies, the emails, the voice memos, the exit strategy. She scrolled in silence, jaw tight, eyes absorbing each document with surgical efficiency. When she reached the liability clause, the one designed to leave me buried in debt while they boarded a flight to the Bahamas, she exhaled slowly through her nose. He was going to disappear Thursday, I said. Today is Wednesday, she replied. Then we move now. She opened her own laptop and began building what she called a cascade release, a simultaneous deployment of evidence to multiple channels at once, timed to hit before Magnus's 7 a.m. investor call. She explained each step in clipped, methodical sentences, and I listened the way I listened when learning a new metalworking technique, absorbing every detail, asking only what mattered. We divided the targets. The board of directors and all 18 investors in my jewelry tech company would receive a compiled dossier, wire transfer records, the forged authorization letter with metadata exposing the lifted signature, the shell company documentation, and a legal summary I drafted myself at the table while Riley Stone built the distribution system. 2 years ago, I had enrolled in a short legal writing course for contract negotiations. Magnus had called it unnecessary. Tonight, it was a weapon. The financial press, 3 outlets Riley identified as having covered our company launch, would receive an anonymized tip with attached documents and a statement from me, signed with my full name. No anonymity. I was done being invisible. Ria's 1.2 million Instagram followers would receive something different. Riley accessed a network of public interest accounts, not fake, not bots, but real communities dedicated to exposing financial fraud and influencer deception. She drafted a thread linking Ria's sponsored campaign invoices, the ones used to launder Magnus's transfers, directly to her brand accounts. Each post included time-stamped receipts and the voice memo where Ria had called me naive. She built her platform on performance, I told Riley. Let her audience see the full performance. Riley looked up briefly. Sending to her brand partners too, the cosmetics house, the fashion line. Her contracts likely have morality clauses. I nodded. Send it. For Magnus's family, his brother in Seattle, his mother in Scottsdale, the uncle who had invested early and trusted us both. I wrote individual messages. Not cruel, factual. Each one began the same way. I'm sorry to send this before sunrise, but you deserve the truth before the press does. I had always liked his family. That hadn't changed. The distinction between Magnus and the people who loved him mattered to me, even now. At 5 a.m., the scheduled offshore transfer triggered automatically. Riley had already isolated it. Not reversed, not stolen, but flagged and frozen through a fraud alert filed with the Financial Compliance Board. The money sat suspended in a digital corridor, going nowhere, evidence preserved in transit. At 5:47 a.m., everything was ready. Riley looked at me across the table. The kitchen was pale with pre-dawn light, our faces half in shadow. She said nothing, just turned the laptop toward me. A single button. Send all. I thought about Magnus walking through that door 10 years ago. Flowers, champagne, a speech about building a life together. I thought about designing the bracelet I gave him last night, engraving each link with patient hands. I thought about every meeting I'd attended, every client I'd charmed, every risk I'd taken that had quietly funded the empire he was trying to steal. Then I pressed send. The interface pulsed once. A progress bar appeared, steady and unhurried. 18 investor inboxes, 3 press outlets, 14 family contacts, 4 brand partners, thousands of followers through Riley's distribution network. All of it simultaneously, spreading outward like a signal from the center of a quiet earthquake. By 6 a.m., the first reply arrived. One of the lead investors, subject line reading only, "Is this real?" I typed back, "Every document is authenticated. I'm available for a call at 7. By 6:20 a.m., 2 more investors had replied. One board member called my cell directly. I answered with a composed voice and walked him through the evidence for 11 minutes. He said, almost to himself, "We trusted him because of you." I told him that was precisely what Magnus had counted on. By 6:45 a.m., Ria's name had begun trending on a consumer watchdog forum. Screenshots of her brand campaign invoices were circulating alongside the audio clip of her voice. Her comment section, always a manicured garden of admiration, had shifted sharply. Her cosmetics partner had already suspended their collaboration pending review. At 6:58 a.m., I received a message from an unknown number. 2 words. Who did this? I recognized the cadence. Magnus. I set the phone face down on the table. At 7 a.m. exactly, his investor call connected. 12 participants logged in. Magnus was not among them. I was. I introduced myself as the majority shareholder of record, which, as the original founding partner and primary capital source, I legally remained, despite every document he'd crafted to suggest otherwise. Riley had confirmed this with a corporate attorney friend at midnight. The call lasted 22 minutes. By the end, 3 board members had moved to freeze company assets and initiate a formal audit. One investor mentioned that authorities had already been contacted. I ended the call, set the phone down, and looked at Riley. She was already packing her bag. She paused at the door and turned back. "What are you going to do now?" I looked around the house. The shattered glass I hadn't swept, the dead candles, the face-down photograph. Then I looked at the table where my latest jewelry prototype still rested under the lamp, catching light the way good design always does, even in the dark. I took a slow breath. The air tasted like rain and something new. Not victory exactly, but the clean smell of honest ground. I'm going to rebuild, I said. Riley smiled once, small and certain, and walked out. The city outside filled with morning sound, traffic, birds, the distant rhythm of a world that had continued turning while mine broke apart and reformed. Somewhere across that city, Magnus had woken to a phone full of catastrophe and a door Rhea was about to close permanently. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I sat down in front of my design sketchbook, the one I hadn't opened in weeks, and turned to a clean page. At the top, in careful letters, I wrote one word: rebirth. By morning, the world had changed. The first sunlight washed over my studio like forgiveness, soft, gold, and silent. I stood by the window watching the city breathe, the same skyline that had witnessed my humiliation now bowing quietly before restitution. Somewhere out there, servers were still processing the evidence Riley launched overnight. Contracts, transfers, signatures, voices. Truth was now public property. At 7:12 a.m., sirens echoed faintly from the avenue below. I didn't flinch. The officers were heading toward Magnus's penthouse across the park, confirmed by a breaking news alert flashing on my laptop. Corporate fraud investigation. Levin Technologies CEO under audit. Even the headline sounded clinical, detached, almost polite. It never captured the real scene. Magnus in his tailored robe, phone buzzing uncontrollably, while the life he'd engineered on deceit collapsed detail by detail. Another notification. Rhea Voss releases statement denying knowledge of financial misconduct. I read it without emotion. Within minutes, her followers flooded the comments with screenshots proving otherwise. Her brand sponsors retreated publicly. The empire built on filters and lies had dissolved before sunrise. I turned away from the window and picked up the bracelet I'd crafted for Magnus, the one engraved, "Love is built on trust." The metal glimmered faintly in the light, almost mocking. I dropped it into the discard bin where defective design prototypes waited for melting. It landed with a dull thud, final and absolute. The house smelled of coffee now, strong, real, unperfumed. Riley had left hours ago. She'd texted only once. "It's done." I believed her. The investor board scheduled an emergency meeting for noon. My role had shifted overnight from silent creative director to controlling shareholder reclaiming ownership. Legally, financially, morally, everything that bore my name was mine again. Nothing about that victory felt loud. It felt rightful, restored. I walked through the studio slowly, touching unfinished pieces on the tables, bracelets mid-cast, pendants cooling in molds, circuit chips waiting for integration. Each object carried history, but none carried grief anymore, only intention. When you design jewelry, you learn that every flaw tells a story, a crack, a discoloration, a misalignment. You don't erase it, you refine around it. Last night had been my flaw. Today was the refinement. My phone rang once more. Unknown number. I answered. "Adira," Magnus said. His voice was hollow, stripped of arrogance. "Please, they're saying—" "I sent them proof," I replied evenly. "I didn't mean—" "You meant every word, Magnus. You just didn't mean to be caught." He said nothing. I could hear movement. Doors opening, voices in the background, the sound of a life unraveling. Then he whispered, "You'll regret this." I almost smiled. Regret? I felt it for 10 years. I'm done now. I ended the call before he could reply. The silence that followed felt cleaner than any apology could have. Outside, the sun cleared fully, slicing through the lingering drizzle. Light filled the room. I powered up my workstation, opened a new design portfolio, and typed the brand name at the top. Rebirth. It fit perfectly. Because rebirth isn't about forgetting pain, it's about shaping it into gold that will never tarnish again. I uploaded new concept sketches, designs inspired by shattered glass patterns from last night's debris, elegant fragments fused together into stronger geometry. Each piece carried one subtle imprint inside the gold, a wave pattern from the bracelet I'd given him. No one would notice except me. It wasn't nostalgia, it was reclamation. Emails continued arriving, reporters requesting interviews, investors pledging renewed confidence, former clients congratulating my courage. I answered some, ignored others. My focus stayed on creation. I stepped outside for the first time since midnight. The city smelled of wet concrete and new beginnings. People moved with purpose. Cars honked. Someone laughed close by. Life kept unfolding, indifferent but honest. As I walked down the steps, I saw the delivery truck from the jewelry materials supplier pulling up. The driver smiled. "You're back early this season," he said. "Yes," I replied. "This time, I'm building for myself." Back inside, I switched on the studio lights. The room gleamed. Gold, silver, titanium. The hum of equipment replaced the noise of betrayal. Every click, every spark sounded like truth, finding its rightful place. I thought about the viewers who would hear this story later. Strangers watching on screens, heads tilted, hearts racing, seeing themselves in the reflection of my fall and rise. Where are you watching from? Ever felt this betrayal? Because betrayal is universal, but resurrection, that's individual. At 9 a.m., another news update appeared. Magnus Levin detained for questioning. Corporate assets frozen pending investigation. At 9:05, Rhea publicly unfollowed him. At 9:10, her own sponsor terminated her contract. The world was moving exactly as planned. Without my interference now, only consequence. I took off my gloves and looked down at my hands. They were steady, clean, human. Before the screen fades to black, know this. Every twist, every tear, every triumph in this story came from human hands. A real writer, a real heart, crafted every word you just experienced. If this hit you deep, drop a comment. What betrayal did you overcome? Where are you watching from tonight?